"What do you mean my account is overdrawn?" I said, staring at my phone in mock surprise as Brandon's sister ranted about the rent money he promised her. "He did what?" I repeated, keeping my voice steady, letting her believe I was just learning about my husband's sudden disappearance. I never expected to be hit with such a barrage of betrayal all at once. Just minutes earlier, I had discovered a terse note left on the kitchen counter by my husband, a note that read simply, "Goodbye. Never loved you anyway." I had brushed it off at first as some cruel joke, but then the bank fraud alerts started popping up on my screen. Each alert was a fresh, unwelcome reminder that our joint account, once a symbol of our promising partnership and shared dreams, had been systematically emptied. Our life together had been built on trust. We had planned a future of quiet dinners, shared adventures, and financial security. I had believed in every word we exchanged, every promise we made, and every dream we nurtured together. But in that single moment, the foundation of our entire life crumbled before my eyes. The note, the empty account, and Brandon's sister's angry tirade all converged into one devastating revelation. The man I loved had not only walked away without a word, but he had also betrayed every ounce of trust we had built together. As I held my phone, a swirl of emotions surged within me, shock, hurt, and a deep, searing anger. Yet I forced myself to maintain a calm exterior. I couldn't let the bitter sting of betrayal show, not yet. In that instant, I realized that everything I had once believed about our future was a lie, and I was left to pick up the shattered pieces of a life I no longer recognized. And so, with my heart pounding and my mind racing, I took a deep breath. The journey ahead promised to be a long and painful one, but I knew that in order to reclaim my life, I would need to face the truth head-on, and turn this betrayal into the catalyst for my own rebirth. After Brandon's sister's tirade and my own stunned disbelief over the overdrawn account, the full weight of the betrayal began to settle in. In that very moment, as my eyes darted between the angry messages on my phone and the unresolved questions hanging in the air, I remembered the note, a final, icy goodbye my husband had left behind. It was pinned to our counter, written in his familiar scrawl, yet the words felt alien and cutting. "Goodbye. Never loved you anyway." Those 4 words reverberated in my mind as if they were being shouted in a quiet, empty room. They weren't just a farewell, they were a declaration of a love that, according to him, had never truly existed. I stood frozen for a heartbeat, the reality crashing down around me as I struggled to piece together the shards of a life that had suddenly turned unrecognizable. Alongside the note, a series of bank fraud alerts began popping up on my phone, each one a stark confirmation that our joint account, once a symbol of our mutual trust and shared dreams, had been systematically drained. The note and the alerts formed a brutal duet, one message of emotional abandonment, and another of calculated financial betrayal. I tried to steady my breath and keep my voice calm, even as shock and anger warred beneath the surface. Deep inside, I knew that this wasn't a simple mistake or an accident, it was a deliberate severing of the ties we had once cherished. My husband had not only abandoned me with a dismissive goodbye, but he had also taken away the security we had built together, leaving me to face the consequences alone. In that raw, unfiltered moment of discovery, I was forced to confront a painful truth: everything I believed in, the promises, the future we had planned, the very essence of our partnership, had been reduced to a cruel lie. And as the bank alerts continued to flash relentlessly on my screen, I realized that the journey ahead would be one of not just emotional recovery, but of reclaiming every part of my life that he had so callously tried to erase. In the seconds following the shocking discovery, a tidal wave of emotions crashed over me. My heart pounded erratically, each beat echoing the pain of betrayal as I stared at the bank alerts and the finality of his note. I felt as if the world had abruptly tilted on its axis, and every cherished memory, the quiet dinners, the shared laughter, the dreams we built together, suddenly felt like a cruel mirage. I slumped into a chair, the phone still clutched in my trembling hand, and allowed myself a moment of raw vulnerability. Tears streamed down my face, unbidden and unashamed, as disbelief mingled with a searing sorrow. How could the man I loved, the one I trusted with every part of me, dismiss our years together with such cold indifference? The note's simple, brutal words, "Goodbye. Never loved you anyway," reverberated in my mind, each syllable slicing deeper than the last. In that dark, silent space, I felt utterly alone. The realization that our joint account, the financial lifeline that symbolized our mutual trust, had been emptied away in a calculated act of deception left me numb. It was as though every promise we had made was nothing but a lie, and the future I had envisioned with him dissolved into a haze of regret and unanswerable questions. Anger began to simmer beneath the layers of heartache, a fierce, desperate need for answers and justice. Yet, even as I seethed with betrayal, I couldn't escape the overwhelming sadness that threatened to engulf me. Every thought turned to the memories of our past, quiet evenings spent planning our future, shared dreams whispered in the soft glow of candlelight, and the once bright hope of a life built together. In that solitary moment, with my tears and shattered trust as my only companions, I recognized that nothing would ever be the same. The man I thought I knew had become a ghost in my memories, leaving behind a trail of emptiness and a profound, aching void. The emotional impact of his betrayal was absolute, and I was left to wonder how I would ever begin to piece together the fragments of a future that now seemed irreparably broken. As I sat there drowning in heartbreak, the soft chime of my phone jolted me back to a harsher reality. Just when I thought I had absorbed all the emotional shock from his goodbye note, another wave of betrayal hit me in the form of bank fraud alerts. One after another, notifications flashed on the screen, unexpected withdrawals, unauthorized transactions, and a steadily declining balance that once symbolized our shared future. At first, I almost thought it was a glitch, a cruel trick of technology in my fragile state. But each alert confirmed a devastating truth. While I was busy grappling with the emotional wreckage of his parting words, he had been meticulously emptying our joint account. The familiar numbers that had once reassured me of our financial stability were now replaced with stark figures that painted a picture of calculated deceit. I stared at the alerts, my breath catching in my throat, as a cold dread settled over me. The bank's messages were clinical and unfeeling, each one a reminder that his betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial, too. It was as if every dollar he had taken away was a final punctuation mark to our 12-year history together. In that moment, the initial shock of his note was amplified by the crushing reality of our finances being drained. The room felt colder, the weight of each fraudulent transaction pressing down on me. I knew I had to act quickly, but a part of me was paralyzed, unable to fathom how I would ever rebuild from this dual assault on my heart and security. Yet, amid the rising panic, a small ember of determination began to flicker. These alerts, though painful, also provided undeniable evidence, a trail of numbers and dates that documented the systematic dismantling of our shared life. I realized that if I could just piece together the full extent of his deception, I might be able to fight back and reclaim control. With trembling hands, I began scrolling through my bank statements, each alert a stark reminder of the betrayal I now faced on multiple fronts. The phone, once a lifeline of connection, had become a messenger of my shattered reality. And as the alarms continued to sound, I knew that I was standing at the precipice of a long and arduous battle, a battle to restore not just my finances, but my dignity and the trust that had been so ruthlessly broken. In the quiet aftermath of those relentless fraud alerts, a painful clarity began to settle in. The shock of his goodbye note was now intertwined with the undeniable evidence of his financial deceit. It wasn't just that he had left me with a cold, dismissive farewell, it was that he had systematically dismantled the very foundation of our shared life, both emotionally and monetarily. As I pored over the bank statements and transaction histories, every unauthorized withdrawal and suspicious transfer painted a damning portrait of calculated betrayal. I realized that his actions were not the result of a momentary lapse or an innocent mistake, they were the deliberate steps of someone who had meticulously planned to sever every tie between us. Each dollar that disappeared was a testament to his callousness, a tangible symbol of the trust we had built, now turned into a weapon against me. The weight of this dual betrayal was crushing. On one hand, there was the emotional devastation of being told, in just a few stark words, that his love had never truly existed. On the other, the cold numbers on my screen confirmed that every financial promise we'd made together was nothing more than an illusion. I felt stripped of everything I had once believed in, the dreams, the security, and the future we had so lovingly crafted. In that moment, a bitter truth crystallized. The man I trusted had not only abandoned our relationship with a dismissive note, but he had also betrayed every commitment we had made to one another. This wasn't merely a breakup, it was an all-out attack on the life we had built together. The realization stung sharply, leaving me with an overwhelming mix of anger, sorrow, and a growing resolve. I knew that if I was to rebuild from these ruins, I would have to fight back with every ounce of strength I could muster, reclaiming not just the money that was stolen, but the very dignity that had been so callously taken from me. With the painful truth now glaring on every bank statement and fraud alert, I knew I couldn't simply sit in disbelief. I had to take action, systematically, meticulously, and with an unwavering determination to expose the full extent of his betrayal. Late into the night, after the boutique had long closed its doors and the quiet of the empty house enveloped me, I spread out our financial records across the kitchen table. Each piece of paper, every digital notification on my phone, became a puzzle piece in a damning picture of deceit. I began marking dates, cross-referencing transactions, and noting patterns that revealed how he had siphoned money away. The more I uncovered, the more it became clear. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment mistake, it was a calculated dismantling of our shared future. I reached out to a trusted friend who worked in finance, someone who could help me decipher the cryptic details of the transactions. Together, we pored over the numbers, tracing unauthorized withdrawals and suspicious transfers. Every fraudulent charge felt like a punch in the gut, a stark, undeniable record of the betrayal that had robbed me not only of trust, but of our financial stability as well. As I gathered evidence, my emotions oscillated between burning anger and a numbing determination. Each piece of proof was both a bitter reminder of what I had lost and a stepping stone toward reclaiming my independence. I began to compile a detailed dossier, organizing the evidence in a way that left no room for doubt. It was a painstaking process, but with every document I filed away, I felt a surge of empowerment. I was turning my anguish into ammunition. By the time dawn crept over the horizon, I had a clear, comprehensive record of his deceit. The evidence was irrefutable, a trail of carefully orchestrated transactions that left no doubt about his intentions. In that quiet, solemn morning, I realized that this investigation wasn't just about uncovering numbers on a screen, it was about reclaiming every piece of my dignity that he had tried to steal away. Armed with the full weight of this evidence, I resolved that I would not let his betrayal define my future. Instead, I would use every shred of proof to fight back, legally and emotionally, ensuring that I reclaimed not only my finances, but also my power and self-respect. And so, as I carefully gathered the final pieces of my evidence, a quiet determination took root within me. The journey toward justice had only just begun. Armed with the damning dossier of evidence, I knew I could no longer remain in the shadows of betrayal. I reached a point where I needed to confront him, demanding answers for every unauthorized withdrawal, every fraudulent transfer that had dismantled our shared future. With trembling resolve, I picked up the phone and dialed his number, the evidence of his deceit echoing in every ring. When he finally answered, his voice was cool and detached, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. I kept my tone measured as I said, "We need to talk. I have everything, bank statements, transaction records, every single detail that proves what you've done." His silence on the other end spoke volumes, a hesitation that fueled my anger even further. Unable to get a direct answer over the phone, I arranged a face-to-face meeting in a neutral setting, a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town where we had once met on happier occasions. When we sat down, the air between us was heavy with unspoken accusations. I slid the neatly organized folder across the table, watching his eyes dart nervously over the pages filled with undeniable proof. "What do you have to say for yourself?" I demanded, my voice firm yet laced with the heartbreak of shattered trust. His response was a jumble of excuses and feeble attempts at justification, a litany of half-truths that did nothing to erase the cold facts staring back at me. Each feeble explanation only deepened the chasm of betrayal that lay between us. I pressed on, determined to hear him out, even as the pain in my chest threatened to overwhelm me. I needed to understand if there was any semblance of remorse or if this was merely a calculated severance of our life together. But with every question, his answers grew more evasive, his tone more dismissive. The confrontation laid bare the stark reality: he had orchestrated this betrayal with a cold precision that left no room for genuine remorse. Leaving that meeting, I felt both a surge of anger and a sense of liberation. The confrontation, as painful as it was, confirmed what I had feared all along. His evasions were not the ramblings of a confused man, but the calculated denials of someone who had already decided to walk away, leaving me to pick up the shattered remnants of our dreams. In that bitter moment of confrontation, as I gathered the scattered pieces of my dignity, I realized that I would no longer allow his silence and evasions to dictate my future. The answers I had sought from him were now mine to interpret, a call to take back control of my life, to use his betrayal as the impetus for rebuilding not just my finances, but my very sense of self. And so, with each passing word and every unanswered question, I began to understand that this confrontation was not an end, but the first step toward reclaiming my own power. After the bitter confrontation, I knew I couldn't face the aftermath of his betrayal alone. The raw sting of his evasive denials and the mounting evidence of financial deceit left me desperate for a solid support system. In the days that followed, I reached out to the people who had always been there, friends who had seen me at my strongest and weakest, family members who knew my heart, and a trusted attorney who specialized in cases just like mine. Late one evening, with the weight of the evidence still fresh on my mind, I called my best friend, Elise. Her voice, warm and steady, was a lifeline in that turbulent moment. I recounted every detail, the note, the fraud alerts, the confrontation, and listened as she offered both a shoulder to cry on and a plan of action. "You're not alone in this," she assured me, her tone resolute. "We'll get through it, and you'll come out even stronger." Encouraged by Elise's unwavering support, I then reached out to my sister and a few close family members. Over cups of tea and countless text messages, I shared my story. Their words of comfort mingled with practical advice, reminders that I deserved respect and that I should take immediate steps to protect my financial future. Their concern wasn't just emotional, it was pragmatic. They urged me to document every transaction and to preserve every piece of evidence, knowing that the path ahead would require both emotional and legal fortitude. With my heart steadied by the support of those who cared, I scheduled a meeting with a reputable attorney, someone with a reputation for handling cases of financial betrayal with precision and empathy. In that sterile, office-like setting, as I laid out the dossier of evidence, I felt a glimmer of hope. The lawyer's calm, measured questions and his confident assurance that I had a strong case provided me with the clarity I so desperately needed. He explained my options, the potential timeline for legal proceedings, and the steps I would need to take to secure my own financial future. His words were like a blueprint for reclaiming the life I had thought was lost. In the weeks that followed, I began to see the pieces of the puzzle coming together. Every conversation with a friend, every comforting word from a family member, and every detailed discussion with my attorney fortified my resolve. I realized that while the betrayal had cut deep, it had also opened the door to a new beginning, one where I would no longer be defined by his lies and theft, but by my own strength and the support network rallying around me. Armed with this collective strength and a clear plan of action, I felt ready to face the next phase of this harrowing journey. The days ahead would be challenging, but with the unwavering support of those who truly cared, I knew I could navigate the storm and reclaim both my dignity and my future. Armed with the evidence and buoyed by the support of friends, family, and my legal team, I knew it was time to fight back. No longer willing to be a passive victim of his calculated betrayal, I set about reclaiming not only my finances but also my dignity. The first step was to formalize the divorce proceedings. In a somber meeting at my attorney's office, I presented every piece of evidence, the bank statements, the fraud alerts, the note, and every record of his unauthorized transactions. My lawyer's confident nod and the way he meticulously organized my case gave me a sense of purpose amid the chaos. He explained that our case was strong, and that I had every right to demand not only a fair division of our assets but also restitution for the money he had stolen. Simultaneously, I took immediate steps to secure my own financial future. I closed our joint account and opened new accounts solely in my name, ensuring that I would no longer be exposed to any further fraud. I worked closely with a financial advisor who helped me set up protective measures, credit freezes, alerts, and a thorough review of my credit report, to prevent any additional unauthorized activity. Every phone call, every meeting, felt like a reclaiming of control over my life. I also documented every conversation and transaction, building a rock-solid case that left no room for doubt. Each piece of evidence was meticulously filed, each detail noted, so that when I stepped into the courtroom, I would be armed with the truth. It wasn't just about recovering the money, it was about proving that the life we'd built together was built on lies, and that I deserved a fresh start, free from his deception. As the legal process advanced, I found solace in the small victories, a favorable court order here, a helpful suggestion from my attorney there. Each step forward reinforced the realization that I was no longer defined by his betrayal. I was taking decisive action, one that was both a fight for justice and a necessary step towards rebuilding my life. In that decisive moment of counteraction, I transformed the anguish of his actions into a catalyst for change. I wasn't just fighting to recover funds, I was fighting for my future, my independence, and the right to trust again. Every legal document I signed, every protective measure I put in place, was a reaffirmation of my strength and a declaration that I would no longer be a victim of his callous disregard. The journey ahead promised challenges, but with each legal and financial step I took, I was reclaiming the power that was always rightfully mine. In the final stretch of this harrowing journey, I found myself standing on the threshold of a new life, one defined not by betrayal and loss, but by resilience and renewed hope. The legal battles and financial safeguards had culminated in a series of small, hard-won victories that slowly restored my sense of security and self-worth. Each court order, each decisive meeting with my attorney, reinforced that I was no longer the passive victim of his calculated deceit. I was reclaiming not only my finances, but my future. The final settlement arrived like a bittersweet punctuation to our once shared life, a tangible, albeit partial, reclamation of what had been stolen from me. More than the money, however, it was the knowledge that I had fought back and one that left an indelible mark on my spirit. I had taken the pieces of my shattered trust and rebuilt something stronger, something that was mine alone. In the weeks that followed, as I set up new bank accounts in my name and re-established my financial independence, I also began to rediscover who I was outside of the betrayal. I leaned on my support network, friends, family, and even my newfound legal allies, to help me rediscover passions that had lain dormant during years of shared dreams. Slowly, the pain began to transform into purpose. I poured my energy into the boutique, reinvigorating it with fresh ideas and a determined drive to succeed on my own terms. Every sunrise became a reminder that I was moving forward. The lessons learned from his callous departure and financial deceit served as the foundation for a future where I would trust myself above all else. I resolved to let this dark chapter be a catalyst for growth, a stepping stone toward a life marked by empowerment and self-respect. As I look in the mirror now, I no longer see the broken reflection of a betrayed partner, I see a woman reborn, stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. The echoes of his goodbye and the shock of the fraud will always be a part of my past, but they no longer dictate my future. Instead, they have propelled me into a new era, one where every decision is mine, and every dream is built on the bedrock of my hard-won independence. The journey has been long and fraught with pain, but as I step into each new day, I do so with the unwavering belief that my future is bright, my worth is undeniable, and my life, my very essence, is mine to shape. And in that truth, I find my ultimate resolution, the power to rebuild, to reclaim, and to redefine who I am, free from the shadows of yesterday.